Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Lot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel, and today I'm joined by my co-host Tanner Dykstra, who will often sit silently for hours and watch me. And today we're talking about The Woman in the Yard, the new Blumhouse horror movie, and we're here to give our thoughts on it. But of course, if you have seen this movie, feel free to leave a comment telling us what your thoughts are on it, or join our Discord server where you can talk to us about this movie and many, many others. Tanner Dykstra, we have seen The Woman in the Yard. How do you feel about this feature film?
Tucker, today's the day. Today's the day that we can look upon the creative output of one Jaume Collet-Sera
Yeah, and Jason
and
Blum.
the theatrical output of Blumhouse as well, and say that they made a good
They
one.
did
They
it.
got it.
What the
They
heck?
did it. This is Tucker. This is a very good movie.
Oh yeah.
It is tight. It is efficient. It has interesting family dynamics, and interesting sort of horror hook and everything like that. That gets played out, or it gets complicated over the course of the film. I think perhaps it can become a little too complicated by the
Yeah,
end.
I agree.
I want to talk about it, but overall, it is a very good movie with some very good performances in it, and like really elevates, like it really shows how not try how the other productions that we've seen recently
Yeah.
from both this director and the studio
Yeah.
have been quite low effort. Like you could just make one of these the whole time. Like
Yeah.
it's not like this is a especially original movie. You can point to a lot of influences on it, but like it is combining a lot of good elements from those influences to become a compelling horror film on its own.
Yeah. No, I actually do think it does feel super unique. And I'm just going to say I agree with everything you said. And I'm not going to give my opening thoughts too in depth because they would just be parroting you. But I honestly do think this movie feels very unique because not that the mother son daughter dynamic hasn't been done before, but that's you can't really come up with a new family dynamic, but because the idea of this movie horror wise is uh it's total. I think it's actually really fresh. Is the woman in the yard, this presence that is sitting out there that is very mysterious, is for most of this movie not actually a threat, just an assumed threat. And it is the tension that an assumed threat causes between the family characters and how it like brings out the worst of their aspects as the tension begins to rise that creates the actual horror of this movie is not wanting to see them become more frustrated with each other. You're confused and a little bit unnerved by this woman in the yard, but she's not really doing anything for like an hour
Well,
of this movie.
or is she Tucker?
Oh,
That is the
sure, of
question
course.
that must be asked or whatever. Um, but when I say that this film doesn't feel wholly original, I mean that like I can feel a lot of the ideas being pulled from like some notable horror movies of all time, and then of recent memory as well. I felt a lot of just to point things out. I felt a lot of the Babadook in this movie for
Oh,
sure in
interesting.
terms of the themes that it's tackling. There is certainly some Shining in here with, like you said, the family dynamic, the claustrophobia of being
Oh,
trapped in
sure.
this
Yeah, good
house
point. Good point.
together, and like the main character, the parent of that dynamic, losing their mind, going crazy, like perhaps taking on some murderous tendencies of their own. We see in some imagined sequences, and then there's a little bit of us in the themes as well, in how
Mm.
they choose to sort of
Oh, that's a good
display
point.
them visually.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So those are kind of the big ones that I was like feeling throughout the movie. But don't take that as to say it was like, oh, so unoriginal, this movie. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
no, it's a good blend of these
Sure.
very solid ideas from some of the best horror movies of all time, or of recent years. Where I want to start, Tucker, where should we start with The Woman in the Yard? Is this family dynamic? I think it is what is established the most quickly, obviously, and like from the opening minutes of this, like this is a good like
Yeah.
dynamic that I'm feeling here. This is I am fascinated by this because what you have is Danielle Deadwyler is playing this mother who, she was in a car accident recently with her husband. Her husband died in the car accident, and now she is sort of, she has an injured leg, and she has to like take care of this her two children and their farmhouse or whatever. She feels very overwhelmed. She, is trying to keep things in line, but also trying to maintain her place as like the leader of the family.
Yeah.
And she has a teenage son who's named Taylor, who, is trying to become the man of the house in some respects, and is trying to do some things on his own, do some things his way. things are expected of him, and yet also things he gets yelled at if he doesn't do things the certain way or certain things. And you're like, this is a good tension to this.
Yeah.
It's like, maturing and trying to become a pseudo leader of the family and everything. And then you have the cute little daughter as well.
Yeah.
She's nice. But no, like that tension between Taylor and what is Daniel Deadwyler's character's name? Do you
Ramona.
recall? Ramona, thank you.
Yeah.
Is something that is established
Today's
pretty
the
early
day,
on.
Ramona.
Today's the day, Ramona. And yeah, it's established early on, and like only gets more tense and more, gets close to boiling over throughout the entire course of the film.
Yeah. The family dynamic is definitely the thing that fascinated me most about this movie, because this is one of the first times where I've not seen a trailer for a movie like a ton of times and am completely
Sure.
familiar with the premise. Of course, I understand the being afraid of faraway presence
The
and what
woman
the
in the
hell's going on.
yard. Yeah.
But the trailers for this movie were also very vague. They were very like, ooh, the floaty shots, whatever. And I'm glad that they held things back, because I was just kind of sitting in the movie with, I'm like, I have no idea where this is gonna go. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know what the woman in the yard is going to do, or is capable of doing anything. And that mystery definitely kept me very engaged. But it was the family dynamic that is really the core of the narrative of this film that I ended up really falling in love with, because it's just so believable. All three performances are really, really good. But they just feel like every time they have a little bit of tension between, like, go to your room, or like, oh, you dropped something on the floor. These things that are very mundane, but the greater tension of not only this the woman in the yard presence sitting there and like causing them to all be on edge a little bit, but also interpersonally they're on edge because they hold grudges against one another, and that feels very believable. Feels very like it's not forced in any way to like create conflict between these characters. And I also like that the movie, pacing wise, is very methodical. You say it's efficient, but I like that the movie, for the first chunk of it, is really just about them like living their day. They're going about their day and like making breakfast and teaching the little girl how to write and things like this. Like they're just kind of having conversations about general life
Family
stuff.
time.
But then you always feel this tension, the frustration of Ramona as she's watching her kids be very normal kids and ask normal kid questions and do annoying normal kid things, but she's harboring a lot of grief and depression and frustration that every time there's just like a little bit of conflict, you're like, ooh, things are about to boil over. And so it creates this like really like deep tension where like none of these people are doing bad things, believing bad things necessarily, but they are just they're at odds, and it's I don't want anything bad to happen.
What it becomes is there are multiple moments, even when the woman in the yard shows up and Taylor and Ramona are both trying to like take action, and does the teenage son, does Taylor like trust his mom to do the right thing? Does he believe that he is going to actually protect them? Like there are moments where it sort of flip flops. Where you're like, Taylor's bringing up really good points, Ramona. Like, you're not handling this in the best way, and then Taylor will take it too far. He's like, listen, man, you're just becoming, you're becoming too critical. You're becoming too aggressive. You're taking things too far. Like, it flips back and forth. There's a pendulum swing between, control of the narrative, control of where the movie goes, essentially, between these two characters. And it's very strong. I think it's very good. So then, Tucker, the woman in the yard shows up.
Yeah.
And this sequence
she showed up actually very early. I was surprised.
Which points to me saying like this film feels efficient, because it takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes before she shows
probably,
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have this sequence that we've seen in marketing, in trailers, where today's the day. She opens her palms. You see blood on her hands and everything like that. And then Ramona doesn't really know what to do from there.
Yeah.
She's very creeped out because this woman knows some things about her and her husband, things that went down between them. And so she goes back at the house. She's like, everything's fine. She has a lady who escaped from a nursing home in town or whatever, and we'll just wait. We'll just wait around, I guess. Like, that's crazy.
And again, well, to be honest though, given their situation and the amount of layers of extra baggage that they're carrying, not only just the family is tense after the death of the father figure, but also she has a broken leg, the power is out, their car isn't working. These are very believable things that not only if any of those things hadn't been the case, it would have been like, okay, why aren't they taking more action? But you can understand
Right.
from her, who she's already overwhelmed, already battling frustration, grief, and depression, why she's hesitant to do something more drastic to actually get this woman to go away. Because again, for the first major chunk of the movie, she's not actually doing anything. She's ominous
Yeah, I
and
mean,
eerie, but she's like, I mean, she probably will go away because they're not thinking, oh, this is a horror demonic presence or whatever. They're like,
I don't know why they're not
just
thinking that, by
just
the way.
stay inside. Like she'll probably go away. It's weird,
Yeah.
but like and that feels, honestly, to me, feels very believable. I'm like, what would I do? I
Mm.
mean, if I can't call the cops, I can't really get anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
just lock the doors and hope she goes away.
I guess so. Yeah, and like Ramona can't really like go down the road or whatever. And then by the time that gets brought up by Taylor, she's already in this mode of like, no, you need to stop trying to gain control of the situation. I am in control of the
Mm,
situation. And then yeah, that is what a good chunk of the middle of this movie is just this. They're in the house. They're getting on each other's nerves. Ramona is having these visions of like killing her children or some sort of other grievous bodily harm happening to her or her kids or whatever. And that is where the horror comes from in the middle of this in the middle of this film, until of course the sun starts to set,
yeah,
and the woman in the yard's powers, her abilities
yeah,
are revealed, which is another a super neat thing. It's a super cool idea that she is able to manipulate things in the house once her shadow is in the house. Once the
yeah,
sun has cast her shadow into the house, she can
yeah.
touch the wind chimes or knock chairs over and everything like that.
Well, and
Like
that's
that's
all
when you're just like,
established.
holy shit.
It's all established lightly early on, as
True,
you see
yeah.
these really cool shots of like the shadow of her hand like covering the house, or like reaching out and like lightly doing something, but you're not necessarily sure that, like, okay, she's actually
Hmm.
having this influence. But I love the shadow influence that she has. It's such
Yeah,
a
yeah.
unique horror movie presence that I it's a big pro, and then one kind of minor con is I
Okay.
love this sequence of where she's interacting with things, and you like see her, the shadow of her hand, like
Yeah.
doing
When
things,
like
and
when
things
like
happening.
it's actually sunset and like she is just destroying everything in the house.
Yeah, that's an awesome sequence. My only problem then becomes is they very, very quickly come to terms with the fact that this is not a normal
Oh, that's how she
person,
works.
and that's how
Yeah.
she works. They're like, oh, just close the windows. I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, I as a movie going person and like a horror movie
Mm.
fan, I understand that's how the like scary presence of this movie works. But like
Hmm.
to this point, you just thought she was a creepy woman, and
No,
so like
lately, yeah.
suddenly you're like, I mean, obviously like shit's going everywhere. It's like I understand, like
Yeah.
maybe like the adrenaline you'd understand, but like it felt a little bit too quick for me.
Sure,
Um,
I can understand that.
and
But
and
but,
that's my biggest problem with this movie. It's not even really that big of a problem because I understand the efficiency necessary to like kind of
mhm.
deliver this in a short time frame. But the movie pretty hard shifts from creepy and unnerving, but relatively just focused on the
Relatively,
family drama,
yeah,
to
yeah,
full on crazy horror stuff. And I'm like,
yeah.
that shift is a little bit too quick for me. I would have wanted to
Okay,
warm up
okay.
to it a little bit more. But I also like both modes. So there's really just like a moment in between where I'm like, I wish this was handled with a little more
Yeah.
deftness.
Yeah, I think that I think when the shift happens, it was just something that I was like, all right, I'm ready for this to get more complicated
Yeah.
at this point. I'm ready for it. And it does. And they should go when they go up to the attic and everything,
Yeah.
and like the real hook, the meat, the ideas of this movie, the twists,
Yeah.
the fantasy elements come to bear. Where it is, we have this very cool thing of like this flashlight
So
flicking on
cool.
and off, spinning around, and suddenly Ramona is like the shadow. You can see her like trying to
Yeah.
escape from
Yeah.
her shadow being on the wall, and then the woman is approaching Annie and being like, "I'm taking you home. Don't worry, it's just me." And Taylor's like frozen in fear as he's looking at this. And then when that happens, Ramona comes back. And she goes down to this gun safe, which is transformed into like this weird long hallway,
Yeah.
and you get this great shot of her having the lighter right in front of her face as she's trying to illuminate her way down this hallway. And then you're back in this memory that she was watching on the phone with her husband, but Tucker, she's in some sort of mirror realm, and you're like, whoa, okay, so we're going like way off the rails with
Yeah.
like alternate universes or something going on here.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And again, I think this it goes to my point of it shifts a little bit too hard into this. Is
Hmm.
I am Mr. Lore guy, especially in my horror
Sure,
movies,
sure, sure, sure.
and my problem with the fact that this movie doesn't really seem concerned with establishing its fantasy or science fiction elements, I guess,
Hmm.
is that it makes the themes that this movie is covering as it starts to get into this section, which I
Yep.
think are very interesting and add a lot of important thematic texture to this movie and make it feel a little bit more artistically deft than other Blumhouse movies, especially.
Well,
Um,
certainly.
is that because I don't fully understand what the fantasy elements of the mirror realm and the real realm and how she relates to the woman in the yard.
Hmm.
Is she that person? Is it a manifestation of herself? Is it her grief? These questions are not made particularly clear because the movie never bothers to like. There's not a reason why any of this is happening. And then I'm like, but so then if X answer to this, then
Hmm.
why explanation of what the themes actually mean. And so like it
Hmm.
complicates the message of this movie a little bit by not
It
actually
does.
having its fantasy elements be explained or explored anyway. They just happen.
Yeah, so this is what I want to talk about. So, I mean, we already sort of talked about it, so, but full spoilers for Woman in the Yard, I guess at this point, where so you say that like it doesn't get fully explained, but there is a sequence where basically the woman in the yard and Ramona just have a conversation about like you called for me every single day, you
Yeah.
called for the strength to do this, and you're like, okay, the woman in the yard is a manifestation for her like suicidal ideation, her
Yes, yes.
depression and like in suicidal ideation, and she is there as a manifestation to be like, I'm going to help you actually do it. Today is the day.
Yes.
And like once she hits that line again, you're like, ah, damn, this movie is like really dark.
Yeah.
That
It's
like
serious. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's dour stuff. And then yeah, you get this whole sequence of Ramona puts the gun to her chin or whatever
Yeah.
after she has sent the kids away, and then you get the cut to she didn't do it as you know as expected. You're like, I know where this movie is going a little bit at this point. Like she's going to not do it, and she's going to we got to reaffirm the family unit at the end of this movie. It is an American horror movie after all. We have to do these things, and then they get to the is it a different house or their house?
It's definitely a different house. They don't have a big porch in front
Oh, that's a
with
good
a
point. That's a good
swing
point. But yeah, but like then you pan over and there's a painting
by
inside
her.
from
Yeah.
by her. So like, how did that get in there if this is a different house? And then we pan down to the corner and the her name, her signature at the bottom is written backwards. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, so they're still in the mirror realm. But like again, what does that world mean? Like thematically, that
Yeah.
mirror world,
Yeah.
or what does this mean that we're ending here? Is it
Yeah.
ambiguous? Did she actually kill herself? Are all of them in this mirror realm? And again, if that's the case, what is it?
Yeah, because there's also this sequence that is very fantasy of her being the woman in the yard
Yes, thank you.
being the woman in the and when the woman in the attic when she repeats the same lines that the
Exactly.
titular woman was saying, and she
But it's
takes
like
Annie and
as her,
disappears, but
yeah.
and then she has Annie, so it's like, so are these like two parallel worlds that maybe Annie only exists in one or something like that? It's kind of ambiguous. What I kind of come down on is
Okay,
that uh, the mirror world is the reality where she doesn't kill herself, and
I see.
the
Okay.
world where it's not mirrored is where she does, and so the repeated mantra is like, "Give me the strength. Today's the day. I give me the strength to continue to go on and not end my
Hmm.
own life for my children, but also just because she's again battling depression and grief." And
Hmm.
so I think by the end when we get that cut and we don't hear a gunshot, we don't hear her kill herself or see her kill herself, and
Hmm.
then they end in the mirror world. My mind goes that this is her living out the fantasy of not ending her life.
Okay.
And I don't know necessarily what that means. If I find that
Yeah. No, it is
particularly
ambiguous for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
though, but then the mirror realm thing is also kind of set up. There's like posters and things that mention mirrors, and her daughter draws the R backwards, so like
Yeah, yeah.
like
When we get the flashback to her and her husband on this date or whatever, when they're leaving, there's a theater marquee. They're playing the movie. The mirror has two
yeah,
faces,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like mirrored on the window and everything. There's a couple like cool little neat little visual like hints towards
Well,
this stuff,
yeah.
especially.
And we'll get back to the themes, but I also just want to mention I think this movie is really, really well made. I love the
Yeah,
lighting. I
absolutely,
love the
absolutely.
cinematography. Lots of interesting editing techniques where the camera starts to vibrate and like you get these weird like
Yep.
wipes that kind of reminded me of like the splitting of the atom in Oppenheimer. I'm like, whoa, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah.
And lots of
There.
mirror shots, lots of like figures
Hey,
in the background that feel like you're being watched. I'm like, this is really good
yeah,
stuff.
there's a lot of like good layered like scare horror stuff in this, and I know I don't want to pat myself on the back, but when this trailer came out for this movie, I was like, this movie looks really good.
Yeah.
Like this trailer, the material, the cinematography displayed in the trailer itself was like very solid. So
Hmm.
that's why I was like kind of looking forward to this movie. Like, is this one going to be good? And it is. But no, I totally agree. Very well made movie, very
Yeah.
well performed movie, all things together. It just gets a little like, all right, did we push it to did we take it to 11 at this
Yeah.
ending, like kind of in a bad way? What is going on? And I like your interpretation, but ultimately then I'm like, is it like, did she like kill herself at the end or didn't she? And maybe those are questions that are not meant to be necessarily answered, but I feel like it's important to what the mood of the film
Yeah.
is like, is it reaffirming, that you can still do it, you can pull yourself out of this, or is it the opposite? Because if it is that she did kill herself, and that like this is a very dark movie where she gives into her suicidal ideation, I think about it in like an entirely different way to
Yeah.
if it doesn't end that way.
Sure.
And so landing in this middle ground is kind of like, I don't really know how to feel. I
Yeah.
feel a
Sure.
little bit at sea, a little bit lost with thinking about the film as an entire finished product.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that, and that's what I was mentioning about
Hmm.
its fantasy elements not being explained add a layer of confusion to what it's saying
Hmm.
thematically that I do think is interesting and important and fascinating for on a character level because again, Ramona's a really interesting character and Danielle Deadwyler is doing an amazing job
Yeah,
portraying
she
all of
is.
the weight and history and frustration on that character. And I find the sort of twist, quote unquote, that this is a manifestation of her grief and the strength that she needs to go on is to not end her own life. I'm like, yeah, this is like heavy stuff, and I'm really
Yeah.
interested to see a horror movie tackle something as serious as this. But it because it then is also mixed in with fantasy themes that aren't explained. I'm like, I mean, I'm sure there is an answer, and maybe this is a movie that you would really gain a lot from on a rewatch to
Maybe,
sort of like
maybe.
see how things are more paced out because we don't know that any of this is going to happen. None of this is actually
Hmm.
even shown in the trailers. Like we don't get the
Right.
like stuff in the attic, which I think is some of the coolest conceptually
Yeah, visual.
and
Yeah.
visually stuff in the movie. None of that showed up in the trailer, which is rare for a horror movie to like not show off
Well,
its
yes.
final act.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, while it is confusing, I still do think that thematically it is trying something very impressive.
Of course.
Artistically, I think it's a really well delivered screenplay
Of course.
and the cinematography is great. I think the sound design is amazing, and so
Mm-hmm.
I have this criticism like sitting in the back of my mind, but it ultimately doesn't really matter because this is just a cut above in terms of
It
performances, in
really
terms of
is.
characterization
It
and
really is.
craft. And I'm like, no, you really did something here, and I don't want to like let that criticism, which is kind of major, like weigh down too much on my thoughts on the
I
movie.
understand that. I can definitely understand that. But yeah, like on the whole, I just do have to remember that like, no, wait, like I was really vibing with this the entire time, but
Yeah,
that's not worth nothing for this weirdly ambiguous ending. So Tucker, I'm gonna go a 7.1 out of 10,
okay.
all things considered.
Yeah, I'll go a little higher. I'll say an 8.2 out of 10. I really,
Okay.
really, really liked it. I was thoroughly surprised by it again because very rare for me, really didn't really know what this movie was about.
Sure. Sure.
Usually I'm like, okay, there's that scene, there's that scene. I think the line "today's the day," which is said in the trailer, I think that's kind of the only thing that I'm like, oh, I kind of remember that from the
Yeah. Remember
trailer,
that. Yeah.
but
That's what
it's
they
rare.
really harp on that. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. That's true.
But
Um.
I hope this
Good
movie
stuff.
does well. Good on Blumhouse for producing as artistic and well crafted of a movie it is. Good on Jaume Collet-Sera, who we've seen a lot of
Mm-hmm.
bad movies from recently.
What? Yes.
Pull it out of his butt and be like, hey, you can make a good one.
I still got it. Yeah.
So thank you everyone for watching our review of The Woman in the Yard. If you again want to talk to us, comment section, Discord server, but above all, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.